The mansion is quiet. Jaehyun straightens his jacket in the mirror. Amina hands him his briefcase. Their movements are quick and precise. The evening meeting tolerates no lateness. Keisha sits on the stairs and watches. She knows that look on their faces. It's serious business. Jaehyun turns to her. His gaze is both focused and soft. You stay in charge. Surveillance room. Watch the screens. Any movement at the gate. The red button on the phone immediately. We'll be back quickly. Amina sits down in front of her daughter, taking her hands. We trust you. Don't go anywhere. Just be our eyes. They hug her. The door closes. The cars drive away. The silence becomes echoing. Keisha enters the surveillance room. 20 monitors stand before her. Each one displays a different corner of the grounds. The gate, the walls, the garden, the driveway. She sits down in a chair and methodically scans the screens. Left to right, top to bottom. Nothing. Complete order. The silence outside is confirmed by the silence on the screens. She changes camera angles, zooms in on the far corner of the fence. Clean. She is the eyes of the family. She is carrying out orders. Time drags on. There is a photograph on the table. They are all together. Happy. It gives strength. Keisha's stomach rumbles. She remembers the pie in the kitchen. A sweet snack beckons. All is quiet on the screens. Just for 5 minutes. She stands up, takes one last quick glance at the wall of monitors. 20 calm images. Okay. She steps out into the hallway, leaving the door ajar. Her footsteps echo in the empty house. She thinks of whipped cream and berries. Just a couple of minutes. What could happen? Keisha has already stepped out into the hallway, but something makes her turn around. Habit. Rule. She peers through the half-open door of the observation room with one eye. Her gaze glides across the monitors, the same 20 calm images. She's about to look away, but at the last moment, a shadow flickers across one screen. A quick, sharp movement. Not a bird, not a tree branch. Something large. By the eastern wall, Keisha's heart skips a beat, then starts pounding so hard it rings in her ears. The whole pie is instantly forgotten. She takes 2 steps into the room, her eyes never leaving the screen. The silence around her becomes oppressive, ringing. The shadow disappeared. Maybe it was her imagination, a trick of the light, but everything inside her tightens into a cold lump. She doesn't move, holding her breath, and stares only at that one monitor. In the lower right corner, camera number 12, east wall, a section hidden by overgrown ivy, and the shadow appears again. Clearer, more defined. This is not one movement. There are several. People. There are 3 of them. Perhaps 4. They are dressed all in black, thick clothing that blends into the evening twilight. Their faces are hidden by masks or hoods. They move as one, quickly and silently, like shadows. Keisha watches as the first of them, the most agile, runs up to the wall. His movements are precise, practiced. He doesn't climb at random. He knows the weak spot. He finds a foothold, clings, and a second later, his silhouette is already at the top. He helps the next one. They scale the high fence in a matter of moments, like ghosts, past the flickering lights of the alarm. The system isn't working. They've bypassed it. They're on the property. Inside, at her home, cold terror washes over Keisha from head to toe. Her hands go numb. But despite the panic, clarity flashes in her mind, clear like her father's instructions. These are those anyone. Danger, here and now. They're not just thieves. Thieves don't move like that. They don't climb over the wall of a mansion with cameras. They move with a purpose. Their purpose is the house. Perhaps something in the house. Perhaps herself. Keisha's legs carry her to the table. She grabs a special phone, heavy, with a single button under a red cap. Her fingers tremble, but her movements are precise. She rips off the cap and presses the button. There's one long beep, 2. Every second feels like an eternity. She presses the phone to her ear so hard it hurts, her eyes glued to the screen. The strangers have already crossed the lawn and are creeping toward the house. They're discussing something with gestures, pointing toward the entrance. Dad, she whispers hoarsely when the phone finally clicks. Keisha! Jaehyun's voice was steely, composed, without a hint of question. He'd already figured it out from the call itself. There are people here, she forces out the words, trying to speak as clearly as he once taught her. Her voice breaks, but the information is clear. At the eastern wall, they're already inside the compound. 3 of them, in black. Their faces are invisible. A short pause. On the other end, a car makes a sharp turn. The roar of an engine picking up speed. Good. We're on our way. Very quickly. Turn on the exterior lights. Lock all the interior doors. And find a safe place. Hide. We're on our way. The connection is lost. The order has been given. We're on our way. Those aren't just words. They're a promise. But he also said, hide. That means time will pass before they arrive. A few minutes. Those few minutes are now her battlefield. Keisha hangs up. She looks at the screen. The first of the men in black is already at the main door, pressing something against the lock. She has no time to hide. She only has time to act. The fear is still there, a prickly lump in her throat, but it recedes, giving way to another feeling, a burning, clear decision. This is her home. They are waiting for her. She won't just hide. She will fulfill the other part of the rule. Delay the threat. At any cost. My father's voice on the phone isn't just words. It's a command forged of steel. It doesn't waver. Every syllable is absolute clarity and cold determination. We're already on our way. Very quickly, these words fall into Keisha's mind like heavy, reliable anchors. They leave no room for doubt. Help is coming. She has support. Turn on the outside lights. Lock all interior doors. His instructions are swift and precise. He mentally runs through the house, knowing every crevice. Lighting will blind intruders, slow them down, and make them targets for cameras. Locked doors will create barriers, wasting time. And find a safe place. Hide. The final command, logical. The only correct one from an adult's perspective. End the conversation. Execute. Save yourself. The connection is lost. His voice still rings in my ears, but an oppressive silence falls over the room, broken only by the soft hum of the servers. On camera #1's screen, the man in black is already working on the main door lock. Something flashes in his hands. Keisha stands in the middle of the observation room. Her body wants to obey her final command. Hide. Her legs are ready to run deeper into the house, to a secret closet, or to the second floor, but her gaze is glued to the monitor. She sees the door outside trembling slightly. There's no time to find shelter, to lock the many doors. They'll get in first. They'll find her tracks. They'll search. The thought of simply lying low and waiting for these shadows to prowl her house, touch her parents' belongings, and approach her refuge suddenly becomes unbearable. It's not just fear, it's anger, a quiet, burning indignation that burns away the last of her panic. This is her home, her fortress. It was entrusted to her. Her father said, "You remain in charge. A leader does not hide while the enemy is within the walls. A leader protects." The decision comes not in a flash, but like a heavy, inexorable wave. It won't simply wait. It will resist. It will delay them. Every second they spend overcoming its obstacles will bring their parents closer. It will turn their home from a goal into a trap for them. Her eyes, wide with fear, narrow. Her gaze becomes focused, sharp. She tears herself away from the screen and glances sharply around the room, as if seeing it for the first time. Not as a refuge, but as an arsenal, tools, possibilities. A plan begins to take shape in her mind, fragmentary, bold, desperate. She remembers every bottle, every coat rack, every step in this house. She knows it better than any stranger. The first thing they need is to cross the threshold, so you need to meet them there. Keisha slips out of the observation room and runs down the hallway, not toward the bedrooms, but in the opposite direction. To the kitchen. Her sneakers slap silently on the hardwood floor. She opens the door under the sink. There, among the cleaning supplies, sits a large canister of vegetable oil. She grabs it with both hands. It's heavy, almost full. Dragging her back to the main hall is a task. She clutches the canister, clutches it to her chest, and runs, stumbling but not stopping. Along the way, her gaze falls on a camera in the corner of the hallway. The small screen already shows. The main door has given way. It's open a centimeter. The seconds are running out. She bursts into the spacious hallway before the front door. The floor is dark, polished to a mirror shine. A perfect surface. She rips the lid off the canister. The smell of oil hits her nose. Without thinking, she tilts the heavy container and begins pouring. A golden, viscous liquid spreads in a wide puddle across the dark wood just in front of the entrance. It spills every last drop, creating a long, wide, and deadly, slippery area. The canister crashes to the floor. Keisha jumps back into a clear patch. She looks at her creation. At first glance, it's just a wet spot in the semi-darkness. The trap is primitive, but it must work. The first step inside, and the guest will lose their balance. She hears a muffled creak outside. The door opens a little wider. There's no time for a second thought. Keisha turns and runs further down the corridor, leaving the first, oily line of defense behind her. Behind her, the muffled creak of the front door opening can already be heard. Keisha doesn't look back. She rushes into the next hallway, a narrow passage leading to her father's study and the dining room. It's carpeted here, but the edges are open parquet. She needs to slow them down here before they recover from the initial shock. Her gaze falls on the door to the utility room. She tugs it open. Inside, on a hook, hangs a roll of strong twine, the kind used for wrapping large boxes. She rips it off. It's a good length, several meters. She needs anchor points. On the left is a heavy antique coat rack, securely bolted to the wall. On the right is the massive door handle to the office. Perfect. She ties one end of the rope to the rack's leg, just below the floor, with a tight knot, familiar from rock climbing. Then, squatting, she runs with the other end across the hallway. She doesn't pull the rope very high, just ankle level. She wants it to be out of sight in the dim light. She ties the other end tightly to the door handle, leaving a little slack. The rope itself is dark, blending into the shadows. It won't stop her. It will trip her. It will make her fall, lose her momentum, maybe even hurt herself. Every second counts. The first sound comes from the hall, a dull thud, a short curse muffled by the mask. The first trap has sprung. They're already in the house, so their next step is a search. They'll go through the hallways, open doors. They need one more surprise right at the entrance to the next area. Keisha rushes to the kitchen. There, her hands find a lightweight plastic bucket under the sink. She shoves it into the large sink and turns on the cold water tap. The water gushes out, filling the bucket with a deafening roar that seems impossibly loud to her. She turns off the water, barely able to lift the heavy bucket. Her target is the door between the walk-in closet and the guest room, which they'll probably check. The door opens inward. Keisha enters the walk-in closet and places the bucket on the floor. She needs support. She stands on a stool, grabs the bucket, and lifts it with great effort. Water splashes, soaking her sleeve. She places the bucket on the top edge of the slightly open door, carefully keeping its center of gravity on the outside. She carefully removes her hand. The bucket stands, swaying, but holding upright. The trap is as primitive as a comic book, but in the darkness, as they push the door, thinking only of what's behind it, they won't look up. The light plastic door will open, and the bucket will tip over. Cold shock, wet clothes, temporary disorientation, a few more precious seconds. Clearer sounds were coming from the hallways, heavy breathing, muffled conversation, cautious footsteps on the slippery floor. They had recovered and were moving inside. She had no time to set any more physical traps. She needed something else, to let them know they weren't alone, that the house was alive and dangerous. A smart speaker, large, with powerful sound. It sits in the living room. Her father sometimes listens to music through it. Keisha runs to it and grabs her phone. Her hands are shaking, but she remembers how she connected to the speaker a month ago to listen to a podcast. She opens the app and pokes her finger. The connection is established. Now the sound. She needs something frightening, animalistic, primal. She quickly types "angry big dog bark defense" into the search engine. She finds the recording. 15 seconds of pure, furious growling and barking of a German shepherd. Perfect. She puts the recording on repeat, turns up the volume on her phone to maximum, then on the speaker itself. Her finger hovers over the play button. She listens. Footsteps are already in the first corridor, by her rope. Now, she presses play. A deafening, realistic bark erupts from the speaker's powerful speakers, and then, thanks to the smart home system, from the speakers in the kitchen and hallway. It doesn't just sound. It fills the entire space, leaping from room to room, creating the complete illusion that a huge, enraged dog is rushing through the house straight at the intruders. The growl is low, vibrating, the bark staccato and furious. Keisha freezes, listening above the sound. From the hallway comes a sudden movement, a short, startled cry muffled by the mask, and the sound of someone hitting something. A second trap? Rope? It doesn't matter. The sonic attack is working. They're frozen, scared, disoriented. She's gained another half minute, maybe a whole minute. The barking roars furiously through the house, creating chaos of sound, but Keisha knows it's an illusion. Sooner or later, they'll realize the dog isn't there, or they'll stop being afraid of it. They need to be greeted with something real. Something tangible, something that bites, hits, and gets dirty. She rushes into the kitchen again, this time as if it were an ammunition depot. Her gaze darts over the shelves and countertops. She grabs an empty shopping bag with long handles lying on a chair. The first strike force is eggs. A carton of a dozen white eggs flies into the bag. Perfect grenades. Fragile, sticky, distracting. Then tomatoes. Several large, slightly soft tomatoes from a bowl on the table. On impact, they will turn into red splashes, blinding, frightening, creating an eerie sight. Her gaze falls on an open jar of flour, left over from baking. She slams the plastic lid shut, but not quite completely, and stuffs the jar into the bag. The white cloud is an excellent smokescreen. As a final touch, she grabs a roll of heavy-duty garbage bags. Not a weapon, but it might come in handy. The bag feels heavy. She hoists it over her shoulder. This is her arsenal. Silly, funny, but unexpected. They expect alarms, locks, security. They don't expect flying eggs and tomatoes. The barking continues. It echoes off the high ceilings, creating an eerie, living aura in the house. Keisha uses the noise as cover. Her own rapid footsteps, the rustling of her bag, even her heavy breathing, all are drowned out by the furious barking. She creeps back toward the main corridor, but doesn't step out into the open. She chooses a position, a small alcove under the stairs leading to the second floor. From there, she can see the entrance to the hall and the beginning of that narrow corridor with the rope. It's the perfect ambush. She sets the bag of ammunition on the floor and opens it. The barking works in her favor. She hears someone in the hall. carefully, with gliding steps, stepping around the oil stain. Angry whispers are heard, then footsteps toward her corridor, and then there's a new sound, a dull thud, a short scream, and the slap of a falling body. Then a second voice stumbles and curses louder. The rope has worked. At least 2 people are out of action for a few precious seconds, but there are 3 of them. That means one, the most cautious, could have stayed in the hall or gone the other way. The barking continues, preventing them from coordinating. Keisha holds her breath. She's ready. Her heart beats in time with this false canine growl. They're inside. The first of them, the one who worked on the lock, stands in the hall. He's tall and lean. Through the narrow slits in his black mask, only an angry, intense gaze is visible. He looks at the oil puddle and at his comrade, who slipped and bruised his knee. Their sense of superiority is gone. This house has already caused them problems. The second burglar, heavier, rises from the oily floor, his clothes stained. He nods toward the corridor, from which the sounds of the fall came. Their third comrade went to investigate. The tall man signals with his hand to move. They skirt the puddle and head into a narrow corridor. Just then, the barking, previously thundering in the distance, suddenly erupts with renewed vigor from the speaker in the living room. To their right, both flinch and instinctively duck. It's a natural animalistic reaction to the growl of a predator. It is this movement, this distraction, that prevents them from seeing the dark rope at their feet in the semi-darkness of the corridor. The heavy one, the one who had already fallen, goes first. His foot catches on the rope. He doesn't just stumble, he flies forward with all his weight, hitting his shoulder and head against the wall with a dull thud. He freezes, stunned. The tall man, following him, freezes for a moment, trying to figure out what happened. He sees the rope, sees his partner lying down. His hand reaches for his belt, where something flashed. But before he can do anything, a new sound is heard, muffled, from behind the door to the left. A knock? A noise? He's distracted by the closet door. It's logical to check if that's where the threat is coming from. He takes a step and pushes the door open with his shoulder. A plastic bucket resting on the top doorframe plummets. Icy water descends on him in a devastating torrent, drenching his hood, his mask, and running down his collar. He jumps back with a stifled cry, shaking his head, temporarily blinded and shocked. At that moment, the barking suddenly ceases. A deafening, oppressive silence ensues, broken only by the heavy breathing of the 2 men in the hallway and the drops of water falling from the tall man's clothes. They are disoriented, wet, and one is stunned. Their plan collapsed within minutes. They didn't even have time to begin their search, and the house, which should have been empty and defenseless, turned out to be full of hidden threats. It was in this silence that they heard a new sound, not a bark, a light rustling. And at the end of the corridor, in a niche under the stairs, they saw a figure, small, standing motionless, something in its hands. The first of the men in black, the one who had been working the lock, pushes the heavy door. It gives way with a soft creak. Instead of a dark, silent hallway, he's greeted only by the dim light from the corridor, falling on the strangely shiny parquet floor just beyond the threshold. A second to process the situation. Wet cleaning? A leak? His brain, primed for secrecy and threat, doesn't have time to process the mundane possibility. He takes a confident step inside. His foot, in his sturdy black shoe, lands on the shiny surface. All traction disappears. His foot moves forward with an unnatural, frightening speed. His entire body, already bearing weight, lurches sharply. He instinctively throws out his arms, trying to grasp at air. A short, stifled exhalation escapes from under his mask. He falls backward with a deafening, wet slap that echoes throughout the hall. The impact with the floor knocks the breath out of him. He lies there, staring at the ceiling, for the first few seconds, unsure of what has happened. He can only feel the cool, sticky wetness instantly soaking his back and the back of his neck. His partner, following him, is already crossing the threshold. He sees his comrade falling, but his own momentum carries him forward. He tries to jump sharply to the side, but the other part of his soul also lands on the oily edge. His legs split. He falls sideways with a crash, hitting his elbow and hip painfully on the hard parquet floor, and his momentum causes him to slide a few centimeters, colliding with the other man's foot. They both lie there, stunned and confused, in a puddle of expensive vegetable oil. The silence is broken by their heavy, angry breathing and quiet curses. Their plans for a quick and quiet entry were ruined in the very first second. They rise, their movements stiff and angry. Their clothes cling disgustingly to their bodies. They carefully, tiptoeing, step around the oil stain, moving deeper into the house, into a narrow corridor. The furious barking blaring from the speakers presses on their ears, preventing them from thinking. Their attention is dulled by their first failure and the aggressive background noise. The first, heavier man walks ahead, hurrying out of the cramped space. His eyes scan the walls and doors, searching for threats, cameras, movement. He doesn't look down. In the dim light, the dark twine, stretched a few centimeters above, the floor is completely invisible. His foot steps directly onto the rope and overshoots it. As he shifts his weight, the rope tightens, abruptly stopping his foot's progress. His upper body, driven by inertia, continues to move forward. A complete loss of balance. He doesn't just stumble, he flies. With a dull, heavy thud, his body slams into the wall, shoulder first, and his masked head first. He collapses to the floor, stunned, mumbling something incoherent. The second, taller one, freezes 2 steps behind. His brain registers a fall, but the cause is unclear. He stops abruptly, crouching into a fighting stance, his hand flying to his belt. He looks at this prone man, then forward, searching for wire. A sensor, anything. He sees a rope. Simple twine. Humiliation hits his head harder than fear. They were stopped by a child's trap. He takes a cautious step over the rope and his comrade's body, his nerves taut as strings. He is no longer just a trespasser. He is cornered by irritation and wariness. Every next step is a test. The tall man notices a door on the left. It's ajar. There's no barking coming from behind it. It's quiet. A logical place to hide, or where a threat might come from, or simply the next room to search. Irritated and wet with oil, he wants to act, not stand around. He decides to check. He approaches the door and listens. Nothing. He pushes the door with his shoulder, not harshly, but with a strong, confident pressure, so that he can enter immediately if anyone is there. The plastic door is lightweight. It opens easily. The bucket of water resting on the top end loses its footing. It doesn't just fall, it flips over. A torrent of icy water, heavy and solid as a waterfall, crashes down on him from above. He's caught completely off guard. The cold shock paralyzes him for a moment. The water lashes his head, pours down his collar, under his mask, blinding and freezing his skin. He jumps back with a hoarse, stifled cry, shaking his head like a wet dog. Water fills his eyes, his nose, and runs down his back and chest, instantly soaking his already oily clothes. He shivers from cold and rage. The silence that follows the sudden cessation of barking deafens him even more. He stands there, dripping, trying to wipe his eyes through the wet fabric of his mask, disoriented, humiliated, and, for the first time that evening, genuinely scared. This house isn't just protected. It's like it's toying with them. It's angry, and it still has surprises left. The silence after the barking is as loud as a blow. You can hear every gurgle of the tall burglar's wet breath and the groan of his stunned comrade against the wall. In this silence, Keisha's footsteps resound loudly as she emerges from the alcove under the stairs. She doesn't sneak, she steps out. The bag of groceries hangs heavily over her shoulder. She sees them. One is on the floor, stirring, trying to get up, his movements slow and uncoordinated. The other is wet, hunched over, wiping his face. They look at her, through the slits in their masks, first bewilderment, then cold realization. A girl, alone, the one they might have been looking for. Fear grips Keisha's throat like an icy hand. But she sees the oil on their clothes, sees one of them clutching their shoulder. They've already been defeated by her traps. They're not all powerful. She stands between them and the heart of the home. She is the promise made to her parents. Her hand reaches into her bag. Her fingers touch the smooth, cool shell. She doesn't scream. She speaks clearly, her voice trembling, but it rings in the silence. Get out! The first egg flies in a short, sharp arc. It's not meant to wound. It's meant to shock. It hits the tall man in the middle of the chest. There's a dull, rich pop. The yolk and white splash across the dark fabric, spreading into a grotesque, sticky mess. The tall man flinches in surprise, looking down at the stains. His brain refuses to comprehend. An egg? Keisha already has a second one in her hand. She throws it at the one on the floor, who has just risen to his knees. The egg hits his masked forehead. The shell shatters. Sticky goo flows into the eye slits. The man screams and stumbles back, blindly running his hands over his face. Now it's the tomato's turn. Keisha grabs one. It's heavy, soft. She throws it with all her might. The red tomato hits the wet tall man in the shoulder and smears across his jacket, adding scarlet splashes to the water oil egg mixture. The second tomato flies at the first, hitting him in the neck. Cold, slimy flesh runs under his collar. They don't attack. They're frozen in a state of complete cognitive dissonance. They were trained to resist, to overcome security, to confront. They weren't taught what to do when groceries from the supermarket are flying at you. It's absurd. It's humiliating. It's frighteningly effective because it paralyzes the will for seconds. Keisha watches as the tall man, gritting his teeth in rage, takes a sharp step forward, finally overcoming his shock. His hand reaches for his belt again. There's no time for another tomato. She reaches into her bag and pulls out a jar of flour. The plastic lid is closed, but not fully secured. She clutches the jar to her chest and rips the lid off with her fingers. He is already 2 steps away, his hand snatching a short, heavy baton from his belt. Keisha, without aiming, thrusts the open can forward with force. A thick cloud of snow-white flour flies out, straight into his face and chest. The effect is immediate. He stops dead in his tracks, coughing. Flour clogs the slits of his mask, blinding him, coating his clothes, wet with water and eggs, like a sticky paste. He waves his hands in front of his face, trying to clear his vision. Choking in the white haze, the cloud of flour expands, filling the narrow corridor with a whitish, impenetrable shroud. The second burglar, who had just rubbed the egg from his eyes, finds himself blinded again, this time by this mist. He coughs and thrashes against the wall. Keisha takes a step back, toward the hall. Her world has narrowed to this white fog, from which come wheezing, cursing, and helpless movements. Her arsenal is almost empty, but her traps in this attack have done their job. They haven't advanced an inch. They are trapped in her inventions, blinded, covered, angry, and helpless. She has won every promised second. Now she just needs to hold on. A white cloud of flour slowly settles, turning into a sticky paste on the wet floor, and the burglars close. The tall man, blinded and coughing, takes a careless step back, trying to escape the murky haze. His foot lands on this edge of an oily puddle spreading from the hallway. The treads on his soles, already clogged with flour and egg mixture, lose their last grip. His legs lurch forward. He falls backward, his butt hitting the edge of the massive oak cabinet in the hallway. The sound is dull, bone-like. His body goes limp, his arms flailing limply. He doesn't move. The second burglar, making his way to the hallway exit, steps on a wet patch of parquet. He slips and instinctively grabs the doorframe, but his hand, stained with egg and flour, slips. He loses his balance and falls, hitting his temple on the handle of that very same cabinet. A short exhale, and his body freezes next to his comrade. The third one, the one stunned by the wall in the hallway, finally rises to his feet. He sees those lying in the hallway, sees Keisha standing in the distance with an empty bag, but his own movements are slow. The world swims before his eyes. He takes a step, stumbles over his own weakness and the threshold between the hallway and the hallway, falls to his knees, and no longer tries to rise, simply struggles to catch his breath. Silence, so complete that my ears are ringing. No more barking, coughing, or cursing. There is only the heavy, ragged breathing of the stunned man on his knees, and the complete stillness of the two on the floor. Keisha stands motionless. She grips the handle of her empty bag so tightly that her fingers turn white. She listens. No footsteps, no creaks. Only the ticking of the antique clock in the living room, which now seems deafeningly loud. She takes a slow, cautious step forward. Her eyes scan the battlefield. Two bodies in black lie motionless in strange, awkward positions. A third sits hunched over on the floor, his head bowed. Evidence of her defense is everywhere. Golden streaks of oil reflecting the light, white and yellow stains of eggs, red splatters of tomatoes. Flour settled on everything like frost, and a large puddle of water. The air smells like a kitchen after a failed cookout, and something pungent. Sweat and dust. She doesn't come closer. She watches. The tall man's chest rises slightly. He's breathing. The other one, too. They're alive. She didn't mean for this to happen, but her traps and their own panic had done their job. She retreats to the stairs, leaning her back against the cold railing. The adrenaline begins to subside, and a small, uncontrollable shudder runs through her body. She did it. They didn't get through. The house is intact. She is intact. She held them off until, at first, it's a distant sound, barely perceptible, just below the threshold of hearing. Not a bird, not the wind. A steady, growing hum. One thing. Two. Engines. Revving high, harshly, aggressively. Keisha freezes, listening. The sound becomes clearer, closer. This isn't ordinary street noise. It's cars speeding down their quiet driveway. Tires squeal on the turns. Keisha's heart, just beginning to calm, began to pound again, but this time with anticipation. She glanced at the front door, still ajar. On the gate's security camera monitor, visible from the hallway, headlights flash. One pair, then another. The cars don't stop at the gate. A sharp, brief scraping of metal is heard. The gate, which hadn't had time to open, was simply knocked off its hinges by a powerful impact. Two dark, powerful cars burst onto the property, kicking up gravel, and screeched to a halt right in front of the front entrance, their headlights casting a white light across the doorway and part of the hallway through the windows. The doors swing open almost in sync. Quick shadows dart out. No one says a word. Only quick, confident footsteps on the gravel approaching the house. Jae-hyun is the first to enter the house. He doesn't rush in, but enters quickly, but with restraint, his body braced for any threat. He sees the door ajar and smells a strange odor, a mixture of oil, eggs, and dust. His hand is already at his waist, his gaze scanning the room in a split second, and the picture opens up before him in its entirety. His two men in black, who arrived in the second car, are already neutralizing the third burglar in the hallway. But that's not the main thing. The main thing is the hall. The floor resembles a battlefield after a food fight. Two bodies in black, unconscious, lie in puddles of an incomprehensible substance. Oil glistens everywhere. Yellow and red stains are visible, white spots of flour. Water drips from the ceiling, and there stands his daughter, pale, trembling, holding an empty bag in her hand, pressed against the stairs. Amina burst in after him. Her eyes immediately, instinctively, find Keisha. Keisha! Is not a scream, but an exhalation of horror and relief. She tries to rush forward, but Jaehyun stops her with a quick movement of his hand, pointing to the slippery, flooded floor. Amina freezes in the threshold, her eyes darting from her daughter to the fallen people, to the absurd chaos. Her face is a mixture of incomprehension, fear, and shock. This is not the picture she feared to see. This is something surreal. Jaehyun takes the first cautious step, skirting the oil stain. His gaze is already analytical. He sees more than just a mess. He sees an empty oil can against the wall. He sees a dark rope stretched across the hallway. He sees a plastic bucket lying on its side. He sees a flour can. He's putting together a puzzle. Amina, stepping carefully, makes her way to her daughter and hugs her, feeling her tremble slightly. "Are you hurt? Are you okay?" she whispers, checking her face and hands. Keisha shakes her head. She looks at her father. He approaches, his face unreadable. "Keisha," he says quietly, but loud enough to carry through the silence. "What happened?" She takes a deep breath. There's still a tremor in her voice, but the words come out clear as a report. She learned clarity from him. "I saw them on the camera, by the east wall. I called you. You told me to come back quickly. I knew I had to delay them." She points to the floor. "That's oil." "They fell." She nods toward the hallway. "There's a rope there. They tripped." Then she points to the bucket. "Water above that door. It spilled out." Her gaze falls on the smart speaker. "I turned on the bark." Then she looks at the empty bag. "Then I threw what I found in the kitchen at them. Eggs, tomatoes, flour." They slipped again and hit each other. She falls silent. The explanation is complete. Nothing superfluous. Just facts, actions, cause and effect relationships. She doesn't play the hero, doesn't cry. She states the facts. Jaehyun listens without interrupting. His eyes slowly scan the room again, but now he doesn't see chaos. He sees a plan, primitive, desperate, yet brilliant in its effectiveness. He sees how each trap followed from the last, how they worked to slow them down, to disorient them. The oil destabilized them. The rope took advantage of their haste and poor visibility. The water shocked them. The barking created psychological pressure and masked the sound of her movements. The food attack, it was an act of desperate courage, turning them from hunters into blinded, engulfed victims of the absurd. He looks at his daughter, at her pale, serious face. He remembers her frightened but clear words on the phone. He sees now the result of her decisions. She didn't cower in a corner. She didn't simply warn. She engaged a superior enemy and bought him time, one with interest. His stern, stony face softens. A faint glimmer appears in the corners of his eyes. It's not a smile. It's something deeper, respect. Warm, unconditional respect, and pride that fills his chest with warmth. He takes a step toward her, carefully placing his foot on clear ground. He looks her straight in the eyes and places a heavy, firm hand on her shoulder. His touch is firm, anchoring. "You didn't just hold them off," he says, his voice low, almost reverent. "You executed a defensive operation. You utilized the terrain and the resources at your disposal. You maintained control." He pauses, his gaze growing even more serious. "You were a true protector, the best I could have ever dreamed of." It's the highest praise she's ever heard from him. Not good boy, not smart girl, a true protector. His tone and words erase the last of her trembling. Keisha straightens her back under his arm. She nods. Everything she's done was for those words, for that look. Jaehyun's words hang in the air. Amina, still holding Keisha, hears them. Her embrace, which had been a rush of startled tenderness, suddenly changes character. It becomes tighter, more deliberate. She pulls back just enough to look her daughter in the face. Her fingers gently push a strand of hair from Keisha's forehead, damp with tension. "I was so scared when I heard your call," Amina says quietly, and there's no reproach in her voice, only a shaky relief. "I was only thinking about how to get to you faster." Her eyes, full of tears that never fell, scrutinize her daughter's face, searching not only for physical signs, but also for emotional ones. She sees in them not a child's fear, but an adult's weariness after hard work. And her fear is finally replaced by another feeling, a shocked, bottomless pride. She pulls Keisha back and kisses the top of her head, inhaling the familiar scent, now mingled with the scent of flour. This hug says more than words. "You did it. You're alive. You're our heroine." Jaehyun removes his hand from his daughter's shoulder, but his gaze doesn't break. He nods to his wife, silently conveying that everything is under control. His men have already carried away 2 unconscious burglars, and the third, stunned, is being led by the arms, his head hanging limply. "She didn't just call," Jae-hyun says, addressing both Amina and Keisha. His voice is no longer just for his daughter, he's stating a fact. For the entire family, she made a defense plan. She used every second. She acted like a professional in a crisis. He looks at Keisha again. "You didn't let fear get the better of you. You thought, and you won. You are the true protector of this house." Her father's words, already spoken now, heard again, and in her mother's presence, take on official weight. It's not just praise, it's recognition. Keisha feels the last remnants of the icy lump melt inside her. Her chin stops trembling. She nods, looking at her father, then at her mother. She did what she had to. She didn't let them down. The moment of family silence is broken. Jae-hyun gives a barely perceptible nod to one of his men. The man returns the gesture with a knowing look. Amina, catching this unspoken command, gently but firmly takes Keisha's hand. "Come on, sunshine," she says quietly. "Let's go upstairs and get yourself ready." She leads her daughter away, shielding her from what happens next. Keisha takes one last look at her father. He no longer stands like a father, but like the master of the territory. His posture changes. His shoulders straighten. His face becomes stony, emotionless. He looks at his subordinate, who is holding the only conscious burglar so far. Jae-hyun says curtly, "Clean up this mess and post people around the perimeter." He turns and walks forward without looking back. His steps are now firm, resounding. He enters his office, avoiding the stains on the floor. A moment later, a prisoner is brought in. The man in black, wet, covered in dough, no longer looks threatening. He looks pitiful. His mask has been removed. His face is pale. His eyes dart around the room, stopping on Jae-hyun's stern figure standing by the huge dark desk. Jae-hyun doesn't sit. He stands with his palms on the tabletop. He doesn't shout. His voice is quiet, cold, and very clear. "You have one chance to tell everything at once," he begins, looking straight at the captive. "Who sent you?" The prisoner tries to straighten up, to pretend he's still in control, but his gaze betrays an animal fear. He saw how this man looked at that girl. And now those same eyes look at him, and there's nothing human in them, only ice and calculation. I won't say anything," he mutters, but his voice trembles betrayingly. Jae-hyun doesn't move. He just stares. The silence in the office becomes palpable, oppressive. It lasts longer than any scream. "You broke into my house," Jae-hyun finally says, almost thinking out loud. "You scared my family. My 11-year-old daughter made a joke out of you and your friends. You were lying in a puddle of whatever she found in the kitchen." He pauses briefly, letting the humiliation sink in. "Your employers already know about the failure. They'll cut you out. You have no allies. You only have me. And my question is, who?" The prisoner swallows. A struggle rages in his eyes. Fear of the unknown employer versus fear of the man who is here, in this room, and who sees him as a problem that demands an immediate solution. And he breaks. The name escapes his lips in a whisper. The name that escaped the prisoner's lips hangs in the quiet office. It's not a resounding one, not the name of a powerful enemy from another clan, or an influential official. It's the name of a petty, greedy man, a partner in a construction project whom Jae-hyun had turned down a dubious deal a month ago, a man whose ego proved bigger than his wits. He tried to pressure, to threaten through intermediaries. After receiving a polite but firm refusal, he decided on this foolish act. Jae-hyun doesn't even blink. He's found out what he wanted. This information only confirms his suspicions. No large-scale threat, no war. Just a rat determined to bite a lion while it slept, and sending other rats to do it. "Details," Jae-hyun demands, his voice still even. "How much did he pay? What was the goal? To steal documents? To steal cars? To scare?" The prisoner, sensing the first barrier has fallen, gives up the information faster. The goal was an act of intimidation. Break into the house while the owners are away. Wreak havoc, perhaps steal something valuable for the appearance of robbery, and leave. A message. No mention of a specific threat to life, especially to a child. Apparently, even this foolish client wouldn't dare do such a thing outright. But these hounds in black, having entered the house and found the girl there, could act at their own discretion. This thought makes the ice in Jae-hyun's chest tighten even more. He asks a few more clarifying questions about the communication channels, the place where the money was handed over, and the car they arrived in. The prisoner answers, hoping for leniency. His story paints a picture not of a professional raid, but of a cheap, hasty adventure. When the flow of words dries up, Jae-hyun slowly nods to his man standing at the door. He understands that the interrogation is over. Hae-hyun orders, "Treat the minor injuries." "And wait!" The man in black nods briefly, takes his subordinate by the elbow, and leads him out of the office. The door closes. Jae-hyun is left alone. He finally sinks into the chair behind his massive desk. There's a photograph on the desk. Keisha, about 5 years old, perched on his shoulders, laughing. He stares at it for several long seconds. The silence in the office is different now. Not oppressive, but focused. A plan is already forming in his head. Not revenge. Revenge is emotion. He can't afford emotion now. He needs justice, and more importantly, prevention. A clear, unambiguous signal to anyone who might see weakness or opportunity in this situation. A signal that his family is an absolute red line. Half an hour later, Amina quietly enters the office. She brought him a cup of hot tea. Her face is calm, but her eyes are attentive. She places the cup in front of him. Keisha is sleeping. I gave her some sedatives the doctor prescribed for insomnia after that incident at school. She passed out almost immediately. Physically, she's fine. She's just devastated. Jae-hyun takes the cup, nodding gratefully. The warmth of the vessel penetrates his frozen fingers. I found out who was behind this, he says without preamble. Park Min-seok. Amina frowns, running through her memories. The building contractor? The one who wanted you to turn a blind eye to the substandard materials? Him! He thought he'd intimidate us into changing our minds. He hired those losers. What will you do? Her question is quiet, but there's no fear or plea for mercy in it. She needs to know so she can understand how to protect her daughter in the future. Jae-hyun takes a sip of tea. First, those three. They're tools. Stupid and greedy, but they entered our home. They saw Keisha. They pose a threat simply by existing and knowing too much. He speaks methodically, as if compiling a report. They will be handed over to our friends in law enforcement, with all the evidence, with their own confessions about Park Min-seok. But before that, they will spend some time in our basement, in strict isolation, until they come to a full unconditional understanding of the gravity of their mistake. Until fear erases from their memory any details about the interior of this house and our daughter's face. They will not answer to me. They will answer to the law that I choose for them. It will be a long, cold, and completely legal answer. Amina listens, assessing. This isn't a fit of anger. It's procedure. And Park Min-seok? Jae-hyun's face grows even colder. He doesn't deserve a personal visit. His escapade is a symptom of his perception of my weakness. We need to treat the disease, not the symptom. He puts down his cup. His construction company relies on 3 major contracts. 2 of them are through my partners. Tomorrow morning, these contracts will be terminated under the clause regarding the contractor's dubious reputation. The bank that finances his current projects will receive an anonymous but very detailed set of documents about financial fraud in his company. His own partners, who are already dissatisfied with him, will receive the motivation to reconsider their relationship. By the end of the week, he will have no business. By the end of the month, no reputation. He will become an outcast, whom everyone will write off, fearing even his name. He will be ruined, disgraced, and completely harmless. He will bite himself to death from impotence and fear. He pauses, looking at his wife. Is that fair? Amina considers. She abhors violence, but understands the laws of their world. Physically punishing Park Min-seok might make him a martyr in the eyes of some, sparking unnecessary conflict. What Jae-hyun proposes is the total, methodical destruction of everything this man valued. Money, status, respect. It's more painful, and more importantly, sends a clear message to everyone else. Even the thought of threatening the L family leads to social and financial death. Yes, she says quietly, it's fair. And it's smart. About Keisha, Jae-hyun adds, his voice softening to the point of inaudibility for the first time that evening. No one will ever know about her involvement. For everyone, including those 3 in the basement, it was the work of the house's internal security that they didn't account for. She'll remain in the shadows, safe. Amina nods, and a tired smile finally appears on her face. She trusts his calculation. She places her hand on his shoulder. Go tell her something when she wakes up. Not about business, about how great she is, that you're proud of her. Really. I already told you, Jae-hyun replies, his gaze returning to the photograph. But I'll say it again, many times. He rises. The matter has moved from the emotional to the operational phase. Now it's time to give orders, make calls, set well-oiled mechanisms in motion. Justice shouldn't be spectacular. It should be inescapable, like a cold, methodical dawn after a restless night. He leaves the office, heading for the place in the house where they are waiting for him to receive. Further instructions. The first order will be to move the prisoners, then a series of phone calls. Park Min-seok didn't yet know that his foolishness today would be the first and last decision of his life that would have any consequences. He will soon understand this. The basement of Lee's mansion isn't a dank, dark dungeon. It's a utility room with white walls, good ventilation, and the bright, relentless light of LED panels. It's punctuated by the low hum of food freezers, the steady hum of the electrical panel, and a silence broken only by these man-made sounds. His men lead 3 captives here to a specially prepared, isolated, windowless storage room. The procession moves silently. The 2 who hit their heads are practically being carried. They're half-conscious, their steps stumbling. The third, the one who testified, walks on his own, but is being led by the elbows. His eyes, accustomed to the dim corridors and the shock of what happened, squint in the bright light. He sees cleanliness, order, and feels the chill emanating from the concrete floor. This cold and order frighten him more than the darkness or the screams. There are no emotions here, only function. The room they're placed in is empty, completely empty. No furniture, no objects. Just smooth walls, floor, and ceiling. The door is heavy metal, with a peephole on the outside. They're led inside. Jaehyun watches from the side, in the shadows near the electrical panel. His hands are stuffed in his pants pockets, his face expressionless. Before closing the door, his senior assistant, a man with the same stony face, utters a single phrase addressed to the most intact captive. "You will wait here. A medic will examine you. Water and food will be brought. No talking. Any attempt will worsen your situation." The door closes. The sound of a heavy bolt, the click of an electronic lock, the silence, broken only by the muffled groan of one of the stunned, becomes absolute inside the room. Jaehyun approaches the door. He doesn't look through the peephole. He simply stands nearby, allowing those inside to sense the presence outside through the silent vibrations of his footsteps. His reflection is icy, crystal clear. These people are pawns, but pawns who have crossed the threshold. They have seen his home. They have seen Keisha at her weakest and at her strongest. They are a walking leak, a living reminder of the peace that has been shattered. He doesn't hate them. He feels professional contempt for their lack of professionalism and the cold necessity of neutralizing the threat. What he told Amina about the law is true, but before the law, they will appear different, broken, ready to do anything to find themselves within the protection of prison walls, not in this white, cold, silent nothingness. A week here, under surveillance, completely isolated from each other, they will be separated later. With daily, brief, methodical conversations about the irreversibility of their mistake will do the trick. They won't simply testify, they will beg for the opportunity to testify. Jaehyun steps away from the door and nods to the medic waiting off to the side. With a first aid kit, check them out, treat the bruises, provide basic needs. No extra words. The medic, an older man with calm eyes, nods. He's carried out similar tasks before. This isn't about cruelty. It's about control and bringing the situation to a manageable, predictable state. Jaehyun climbs back up to the house. The oil stain on the hallway floor has already been cleaned, but a faint scent still hangs in the air, mingling with the scent of cleaning solution. He passes by without looking at the place. His thoughts are already there, upstairs, where his daughter sleeps, and in that office, where tomorrow the silent, merciless machine of Park Min-seok's ruin will begin. Punishment must be multi-layered, like armor. These 3 in the basement are the lowest, most basic layer. Keisha wakes around noon. The sunlight filtering through the blinds seems too bright, too normal. She lies in her bed, covered with a soft blanket. The events of the previous night emerge in her memory not as a panicked delusion, but as a clear, almost alien chronicle. Screens, shadows, a bell, oil, rope, barking, eggs, flour, falls, and her father's face, his hand on her shoulder, his words. She goes downstairs. The house smells of ordinary life, coffee, fresh bread. Amina greets her in the kitchen. There's no trace of yesterday's horror on her mother's face, only a warm, slightly tired smile. "Good morning, Protector," Amina says, pouring her juice. "How did you sleep?" "Soundly," Keisha answers quietly. She sits down at the table. Everything is in its place. No signs of battle. "And those? Father took care of them. You don't need to worry about them anymore. They won't come back." There's no awkward silence at breakfast, but a calm, almost ritualistic stillness. Everyone is processing what just happened. Later, when Jaehyun leaves his office, he finds them both in the winter garden. Amina is watering the orchids. Keisha is looking at the fish in the large aquarium. "Family meeting," Jaehyun announces, sitting down in a wicker chair. His tone is businesslike, but not cold. "We'll discuss the new safety rules." Keisha turns to him, wary. She expects reproaches, prohibitions, new restrictions. "First," Jaehyun begins, looking at his daughter, "your actions last night were exceptional, but they also exposed weaknesses. A standard surveillance and alarm system is insufficient if the enemy knows how to bypass it." He doesn't say, "You shouldn't have." He says, "The system isn't sufficient." That's an important distinction. Therefore, he continues, change Changes will be made to the house, unnoticeable ones, new types of motion detectors, hidden cameras in additional locations, sound sensors along the perimeter. All of this will be connected not only to the surveillance room, but also directly to my and your phones, with varying levels of alert. Keisha nods. It's not a punishment, it's an upgrade. Secondly, his gaze shifts to Amina, then back to Keisha. You're training. You acted instinctively and intelligently, but instincts may not be enough. If you agree, I'll organize special training for you. Not combat, tactical. Threat assessment, crisis psychology, the basics of safe spatial movement, first aid, so that the knowledge is systemic, not improvised like yesterday. The offer makes Keisha sit up straighter. This isn't about locking her away. It's about giving her real tools. She feels a small spark ignite inside her, the same one that burned inside her the night she planned her defense. I agree, she says clearly. Amina nods approvingly. She doesn't see this as a militarization of her daughter's childhood, but as giving her control over her own safety. Thirdly, Jaehyun pauses briefly, the in case you're left alone plan. There was one. But it was passive. Watch, call, hide. Now it will have an active phase. A special app will appear on your personal phone. One button. It won't just send a distress signal. It will activate specific protocols within the house itself, automatically locking individual doors, distorting the camera feed for outside observers, simulating activity in different parts of the house. You won't just wait for help. You'll manage your defenses at a tactical level until help is on the way. This is the highest level of trust. She's being handed not just a panic button, but a remote control for part of the family's security system. And lastly, Jaehyun says, his voice softening, the main rule remains unchanged. Your life comes first. All these systems, all the training, to preserve it and give us time. Not so you'll have to confront us like yesterday. Yesterday was an exceptional case, and you handled it brilliantly. But our job is to ensure you never have to make such a choice again. Understood? Keisha looks at him, then at her mother. She understands. She's not being told, you're great, but don't do that again. She's being told, you were great in that emergency. And now we're going to make sure you have the best tools to either prevent similar situations from happening or to survive them as safely as possible. It's a conversation between equals, a conversation with an advocate. I understand, she says. And Keisha, Amina adds, coming over and placing a hand on her shoulder. We're proud of you, not just for your bravery, for having a good head on your shoulders, but our job as parents is to worry. These new rules are largely for our peace of mind, so we know you're as protected as possible, even when we're not around. The meeting is over. No recriminations, no hysteria, just analysis, planning, and trust building. Keisha feels the last vestiges of tension leave her. She hasn't become a victim. She hasn't become a problem. She has become a force for positive change. She is now part of the security system, not just as an observation point, but as an operator. This sense of responsibility warms her from within, more powerfully than sunlight in a winter garden. Jaehyun, watching his daughter study the house layout with renewed interest on the tablet he'd just handed her, complete with diagrams of the new sensors, felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. The threat was neutralized. The family was united. The protector was growing and learning. This was the best possible outcome, far better than mere revenge. This was a sustainable, long-term solution. A new, unfamiliar rhythm had settled into Elle's house. Outwardly, everything remained as before. Silence, order, the smooth flow of days. But Keisha sensed changes in the very fabric of her world. They weren't loud. They weren't frightening. They were like new, stronger threads woven into a familiar pattern. Every morning after breakfast, she spends 10 minutes in the surveillance room, but now it's not just a routine. It's a system check. Her tablet, linked to her home network, has a special app open with a simplified map of the house and grounds. Green icons indicate that all sensors are functioning properly. She's learned to recognize them. Glass break sensors, motion sensors, with heat signature recognition to avoid triggering a cat or large bird. Vibration sensors on the fence. She doesn't just look at the screens. She compares their angles with the map, mentally marking blind spots, which, as her father explained, are now covered by other hidden cameras. One day, during such a check, a yellow light began flashing on the perimeter. Not red, alarm, but yellow, attention. Keisha's heart skipped a beat, but her fingers instinctively reached for her tablet. She zoomed in on the camera feed at the back gate. It wasn't a shadow. Not a person. It was a large raccoon, brazenly trying to squeeze under the fence. It had entered the motion sensor's field of view. Keisha, following the new instructions, didn't call her father. She sent a false alarm animal signal through the app. A second later, the system's automatic response arrived on her tablet. Status confirmed, response canceled, incident recording saved. She had done it, on her own, without panic. Twice a week in the evenings, an instructor comes to see her. Not a fearsome fighter, but an older, fit woman with a quiet voice and watchful eyes. Her name is Ms. Chan. She doesn't teach fighting. She teaches seeing and thinking. They go over room diagrams, and Ms. Chan asks questions. If you're here and a potential threat appears, how many escape routes do you have? Which path is the least illuminated? Which door in this room opens inward and which outward, and how can you use that? They practice the call algorithm. Not, Dad, there's someone here, but a clear message. Where am I? What am I seeing? What am I hearing? What am I doing? Keisha learns to control her breathing so her voice doesn't shake. She learns how to use the most ordinary objects in the house not to attack, but to create interference, delay, and noise. Her father sometimes attends these classes, sitting in the corner with his laptop. He doesn't interfere. He observes. And when Miss Chan tells him after the lesson, she has an analytical mind and composure in simulated situations, Keisha sees the same flash of silent pride flicker in the corners of his eyes as she did that night. One day at dinner, Amina asked, Keisha, aren't you scared now, after everything? Doesn't the house feel like a fortress now? Keisha thought about it, putting down her fork. No, she answered honestly. It used to be scarier. I used to just stare at the screens and hope nothing would happen. Now I know that if something does happen, I don't just have a button. I have a plan. I know how the system works. I know where to go, what to do until you arrive. This isn't a fortress. It's a toolkit, and I'm learning how to use it. Jaehyun and Amina exchanged glances. There was no bravado in this answer. There was understanding. The new role hasn't made her withdrawn or paranoid. It's made her more attentive. She notices how her father, when leaving, no longer says, keep your eyes open, with a hint of alarm. He says, keep the situation under control. And that's trust. She notices how her mother, Mami ki chin simmer, when walking her to school, doesn't glance at every passing car, but smiles calmly because she knows that her daughter has that button on her phone in the most inconspicuous place, and that basic algorithms are running in her head. The strength Keisha discovered within herself that night wasn't brawn or anger. It was the strength of a clear mind in chaos, the strength of responsibility. And now this strength isn't just recognized, it's being legitimately developed, integrated into the family's overall security system. She's not a child to be hidden. She's the first, most important line of defense, the link upon which everyone else's reaction time depends. Before bed, she peers into the surveillance room, as usual. But now she doesn't just glance at the monitors. She runs her hand over the smooth casing of the server, where all the signals originate. She glances at her tablet, charging next to her bed. On her desktop, among the icons for games and school apps, there's now an icon with a simple shield symbol. This is her access, her zone of control. She lies down on the bed. Her body remembers the fatigue from today's classes with Ms. Zhang, from running up and down the stairs as part of the escape route, but her mind is free of anxious thoughts. There is a feeling of competence. Quiet footsteps can be heard in the hallway outside her door, her father making his final rounds. Before, the sound was simply part of the night. Now Keisha knows he's checking to see if the night mode is activated on the first floor sensors. And she knows that tomorrow morning, before going to breakfast, she'll check the system's overnight event log herself, just to make sure all the lights are green. She turns on her side and closes her eyes. She is Keisha L. She is 11 years old. She loves pie and roller skating. Her father is Jaehyun L. Her mother is Amina. And she is the protector of this house, not because she was forced to be, but because she can, and because she is trusted. This is her new truth, and with this truth, she sleeps soundly and peacefully.